camera's on. Right. All right. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. I'm Alex Case-Cohen. I manage the Pend Oreille Conservation District. And we were so lucky. So you've seen me up here the past 3 years talking about bank stabilization or salmonid recovery. And I'm really happy to be able to work with Kayla, who will speak next. So through the Washington State Conservation Commission, this is our biggest grantor. So people, a state funding agency that provides technical assistance and financial support to conservation districts. We were able to receive a salmon recovery funding grant. So you'll hear that, and you already have heard about that a lot today. So this particular grant was a planning and design grant, and I put out what's called a request for proposals, and this lovely human here put in a submission and has helped us to accomplish our goal of writing 10 shovel-ready salmon recovery projects. So I'm going to pass the mic to her and introducing Kayla Casa.
Thanks, Alex. So I'm Kayla. I'm a civil engineer with Osborn Consulting. I am based out of the Spokane office. I also work from Sandpoint a couple days a week. I'm a Sandpoint native. Pend Oreille River and Pend Oreille Lake are a big passion of mine since I grew up right on them. So yeah, I got to start working with Alex back in, I think it was January or February this year. And we picked 10 project sites and we designed plans and got permits ready. And I'm looking forward to just talking to you guys about the program, Pend Oreille Conservation District's goals, what we took out of these projects, and kind of like the whole process of going about it, just so you guys are more aware. And yeah, let's dive into it. So POCD's program goals are really to look at short-term and long-term solutions to improve and protect water quality, enhance fish habitat, and provide bank stabilization. So in terms of water quality, POCD is looking to prioritize reaches to concentrate the conservation activities and projects like the one that I got to work on recently. Also to develop partnerships with agencies and consultants like myself and others to help implement these projects and help design them in an efficient way. And then also to help reestablish water quality monitoring. You know, you really don't know how well a project's working unless you're monitoring it later on, and I feel like that's lacking a lot in this day and age. So hopefully with some more outreach and education, that can be something that can be brought back in the future. So one of the other goals is to help enhance fish habitat, and that POCD wants to prioritize reaches for their conservation activities once again, to help investigate and the existence of threatened and endangered species like the mountain whitefish, the west slope cutthroat trout, and the bull trout in the Pend Oreille. I know those are some of the top 3 most threatened species. So I have those shown down here, if you're not familiar with what they look like. So I think that's the bull trout, west slope cutthroat, and the mountain whitefish. Correct me if I'm wrong. Really? I'm an engineer, not a biologist. I'm learning. Yeah, and then some other things to look at are protecting the riparian areas, kind of like Corey talked about a little bit. Reestablish the native plantings, like Corey showed in his presentation earlier. And then we also are trying to encourage the use of large woody materials. So feeding off of that, so large woody materials, some other natural elements are really great being used in bank stabilization. Some other things are the vegetation enhancement. Those will also help create fish habitat if you're using more of a natural technique versus rock. And with the help of the landowners and POCD, projects like this are able to happen. And this little picture on the right is one of the 10 sites I was working on. You can see pretty steep, bare, eroding banks. So it's pretty common along the whole Pend Oreille River. And I was really excited to work on, I think it was almost 10,000 linear feet of project work, bank stabilization. It's pretty exciting. But before I dive into the techniques that were used, I just wanted to make people aware of signs of bank failure in case you're not familiar. Three most common types on the Pend Oreille are toe erosion, which is when the stream flow is just flowing really fast and just shaving off the bottom of the bank, which leaves it kind of overhanging, which can then lead to mass failure. So you'll just slump off into the river. You can kind of see up here, you know, a little chunk just fell off there. And then bank seepage is also another issue with the river rising and lowering with the dam upstream. Some of the soil can get saturated and then just break apart and collapse. So some bank stabilization, the more traditional techniques that have been used, which I'm sure most people are more familiar with, are riprap, gabions, bulkheads. It's a lot of rock, a lot of concrete and cement. You can see it's just very, very gray. And now we're moving more into the bioengineered techniques in the last several years. So this can include coconut fiber rolls, you've got coconut coir logs, large woody material, and live stakes and plantings. And you can just see in the pictures on the right here, they just blend in with the natural environment a lot better. They provide the same bank stabilization techniques as the riprap and gabions and bulkheads that have been used in the past, but they provide a lot of fish habitat and water quality enhancement as well.
So what, how do, say, riprap, gabions, and bulkheads, what is their impact to neighbors and to water quality in general?
So they can cause a lot of just issues in general. You can see they're not really helping anything. They can, usually the sediment around it can be eroded. It's not doing anything for the fish. Usually nutrients can grow, like the phosphorus and everything that we've looked into. It doesn't provide any shading or pooling or habitat for fish to hang out in. The Pend Oreille River is typically pretty warm, as we saw in Andy's presentation a little earlier. So fish need kind of a place to go. And so a lot of homeowners these days are having to take out bulkheads or the gabions and replace it with maybe wood or coconut matting. And there are some cases where you can do a hybrid. I know on the projects that we worked on with Pend Oreille, we used a mix of riprap and then the coconut coir matting, coir logs, vegetation, and large woody material. So kind of like a in-between scenario. Did that answer your question? Yes. So some benefits of these techniques. So they help improve water quality. They can help retain sediments and nutrients to help keep sediment from going down the river, having stuff like phosphorus from growing in the river, maybe causing algae and just kind of reducing food for fish. So these bioengineered techniques can help provide food sources for aquatic insects and fish. Again, they can provide shade and pools for fish to have refuge in. And this will also help with fish migration and spawning, just so they'll have places to kind of go as they're migrating upstream. These techniques also stabilize the shorelines and help reduce excessive erosion. They provide channel stability and things like the large woody material that can help divert flow away from the stream banks, so it'll keep erosion from happening. I know some people have already mentioned their concerns with wood. You can also do coconut coir logs and have plantings grow in those in a way that it won't block your view. Just get a little creative with it. So the RFQ that Alex sent out earlier this year, it was wanting to focus on 10 shovel-ready projects on the Pend Oreille River. They also were looking at the Little Spokane River, I believe, at the time, and we ended up settling on 10 on the Pend Oreille River. So this is in the Water Resource Inventory Area 62. I just wanted to show you. So the one right up there on the top, that's where the Pend Oreille River resides. And so from there, Alex did a really great job of doing outreach. I guess all of POCD really did.
Mary did the majority of the work.
Thank you, Mary. Actually, those flyers back there on their table, Mary made those and sent them out to all the homeowners, and that's kind of what got this thing started. So there was about 80 plus homeowners that responded, and you'll see them on this map with these colorful dots. And these dots, I have them color coordinated. Red is very highly erosive banks, orange is moderately erosive, yellow is slow eroding, and then green is none. So you'll see there's a nice mix of the erosion rate happening along the stream bank. And so from here, we kind of prioritized how many landowners are interested in a certain area, how bad is the erosion rate that's happening, are they on a tributary or the main stem? And from there, we decided to pick 10 sites, or 10 project areas. And so we had a nice mix of low, moderate, and highly erosive areas that we worked on. And so in total, there was 9,500 linear feet of bank stabilization. I think a total of about 10 acres worth of restoration. So it was a really great impact, I think, to the system. I'm really excited to see how it goes. So I just kind of wanted to zoom in on one of these 10 sites and just talk about it a little bit more. I believe this might be right behind Tiger Slough or Sunnyside. But you'll see there's a lot of really steep eroding banks. They're pretty bare. There's not a lot of vegetation. And there's a lot of homes that are right up on the edge. There's trees. And if something's not done, these could probably fall in the river over time or just have a lot more issues down the road. So just with POCD's outreach and educating people, it's really important that everyone's at least understanding the problem and hopefully are interested in preventing it by hiring people like me or anyone else that does bank stabilization work. So on this, we did 10 project sites. Again, we used a mix of all those bioengineered techniques that I talked about. And we designed 57 homeowners properties to be constructed hopefully next year. So I don't have any before or after photos to show you yet, but hopefully in a couple of years, we will. And so I just wanted to zoom out a little bit. Like Alex was talking about in the beginning, they had to initiate the project. They had to figure out the issues that they wanted to bring up to legislator, to the homeowners, and apply for funding. And once they got the funding, they issued out a request for qualifications or an RFQ. And then consultants like myself will send in a proposal if we think it's work we can do and that we want to work on. And so we submitted one. You go through a contracting phase. That can take a month, couple months, just kind of depends on the timeline of the client and the funding. And then once you win the contract and it's all signed and ready to go, it could be a couple months up to a year, maybe longer, planning and designing the project. In this case, we did it all in just a couple of months for 10 projects. It was really, really fun, actually. But once we finished planning that, we also filled out permits for all the homeowners as well. So I think we did a JARPA, we did an HPA, there's a fish enhancement habitat permit that you can apply for to avoid doing a SEPA if you incorporate the bioengineered techniques that help enhance fish habitat while stabilizing your bank. So it's kind of a win-win situation, and SEPA is kind of a pain to do. So it's really nice to avoid having to do that one. So for this, we're about right here in this timeline. And so now that we've got the permits and the plans filled out, Alex and Corey are working on getting them signed by the homeowners, by themselves, and submitted to the agencies who have been told ahead of time that they should be expecting a lot of permits coming through. And then the next phase will be going through a construction bid and then the actual construction. And usually you'll construct during a given fish window for the certain watershed that you're on. So hopefully low flow, less amount of fish, so less of an impact. So just going over some of the takeaways. Excuse me. I'm recovered from COVID from a month ago, so I have this little cough. I apologize. Yeah, some takeaways from this. We are utilizing bioengineered techniques to promote and support water quality and fish habitat in the banks, like POCD's goals. And it also helps the homeowners. So it's kind of just great for everybody. The more homeowners that are involved, the greater the impact. Like I said, we have, about 10 acres worth of property that's getting repaired, and I think it's going to provide some great habitat for the fish in the future. And POCD has done a really great job with outreach and engaging with the community just to bring awareness. And I mean, we had over 80 people interested, and they keep having more coming in, I've heard. So really exciting. Might have some future work like this going on. So if you're interested, definitely talk to Alex or Corey or Steven, grab his card in the back. And yeah, so the greater the participation in the program, the more cost advantages for the homeowners as well. And I'm gonna let Alex talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you. All right. So in the past few years, there's been a really big push in the legislature for salmon recovery. So let's see, we're going back into December of 2021. It was proposed so a lot of this work does involve agriculture and potential impacts of agriculture on salmon and salmonids. So the initial work was to install mandatory buffers and to, force landowners to install fence at a specific rate. But of course, conservation districts and the Washington State Conservation Commission, who we work with, is not a fan of mandatory buffers. That's not something that we support. We think that each site and each landowner has different needs. So we've certainly worked and lobbied against that. There's another component with the voluntary stewardship program. So if, say, you do run livestock and you are along the Pend Oreille River or a riparian area, please also get in touch with us to discuss that. But so after that, we did receive about $10 million to be spent from July 1st to June 30th of 2023. So July 1st, 2022, June 30th, 2023. So we were able to work with Kayla, as we've talked about. And I will say completing 10 shovel-ready projects with 10 acres of potential restoration is completely unheard of. And there's no way we could have done it ourselves. So just Kayla and the team at Osborn Consulting, they have done an amazing job, and we are so excited to get started on these projects. So in this next fiscal year, I'm not trying to talk too much about it, but it's a lot of what I do day to day now. I'd like to be out playing in the water and in the fields, but this is what you do as a district manager. So we did receive $25 million for salmon riparian projects. And a lot of that money does go to the west side because they have anadromous salmon, right? The salmon that go out to the ocean and then come back. So a lot of the funding is focused there, but we are fortunate to have bull trout, west slope cutthroat trout, and mountain whitefish in this area. So critical habitat, as Andy mentioned in his presentation. And so because of that, we do get to do some of these projects. So our goal, again, is to implement as many of these projects as possible during this time to show that there is more valuable work to be done. So these projects are going to be very expensive, right? And it's incredible how quickly $25 million can be spent on these projects. So our next process is determining who might have a more severe risk of erosion, who is more willing to implement the projects based on what we've seen. So a lot of the plans that Kayla and her team have put together, they do include those bioengineered techniques, which is really what we're trying to see more of. But like she said, there is some of that riprap and some of the rock there if it is, say, a really severely eroding bank, which we're happy to see. But really getting those plants in the ground is what is going to help your bank. A lot of people want to see a hardened fix. They only want to see rock. They don't want to have their view obscured. And I do understand that, but you have to remember that we're protecting these banks not only for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children. So you also have to remember that those trees do grow really tall, right? So if you're looking at a cottonwood, the majority of the leaf litter or the canopy isn't going to be visible in, say, 50 years. So remember that. It won't really obscure your bank that much, and it's a little bit to sacrifice for the long term, in my opinion. So we are looking to implement these projects and how our usual cost share structure works. So say that you do have you're an individual landowner and you're hoping to do a riprap project. We do have some cost share available for you. We do want to see some plants planted, but the Pend Oreille PUD, working with Scott Jungblom, we are able to provide $5,000 for erosion control, erosion protection. You can also receive an additional $500 if you're willing to plant cottonwoods and other riparian species. So if that's something you're interested in, please talk with us. But if you do have at least a moderate rate of erosion, and the map that we use is the PUD's hazard occurrence map. So the PUD goes on the river every 3 years, and they thoroughly check each bank to see the rate of erosion that's taken place in the previous 3 years. And they determine whether or not there's no erosion, low, moderate, or severe. And so as we saw, we are working with a vast, a wide range of folks, but the majority we're really focusing on have to have a moderate or a severe rate of erosion. Additionally, we really like to see multiple landowners teaming together. And that's been one of the coolest parts is we get contact from one landowner and they reach out to say 5 or 6, 7 landowners. And they all give us a call, they give us their contact information, and then we're able to do not just a 50 or 100-foot section of bank, but 500 or 1,000 feet of bank. So it's pretty cool when you partner with your landowners. Additionally, our typical cost share structure. So this means that we provide funding for the majority of the project, and it's typically 75% of the total project cost. And the landowner is responsible for 25%. The really cool thing is it doesn't just have to be cash. It can be, if you have equipment and you're able to do some of the work yourself, you can help cover that 25% match. And even after you reach that 25%, say that you do the majority of the work yourself, and up to the initial rate of cost share, the initial estimated cost of the project, you can get paid potentially more for the work that you're doing. So it's really cool that we can offer that. But as it's stated, due to the expense and scale of these projects, we might do what's called a district implemented project. So we would take on the responsibilities of the project, the conservation district would. We would submit permits on behalf of the landowner, which we're already in the process of doing. And we might consider providing more cost share than just that 75%, because these are, they're $500,000 projects if we're talking about working with 5-10 landowners. So it's a lot of banks to protect. It's a lot to do. We have to pay an engineer, we have to pay a contractor, there's a lot that goes into it, but we're really excited and we're really hopeful that the end project, the end result will be less sediment in the Pend Oreille River, more shade. So in 50 years, we want to see a lot more shade on these areas, and we want to see those pooling, that pooling area where bull trout and other salmonids can get out of the main stem of the Pend Oreille River, where they're essentially baking and cool off a little. So in that cold water refugia that we've talked about. So if you or your neighbors are interested in doing something like this, please get in touch with us. We have a sign-up sheet at the back of the room. Get in touch with myself, Corey, who we just heard from, and Stephen Allen is our new education outreach coordinator. So any one of us, and we'd be happy to work with you. Oh, there's my info right there. Yeah, please send me an email, alexcc@pocd.org, or call our office and we will get back to you. Again, we're a very small office, so we're doing a lot of things. We're doing the job. Each of us is doing at least 2 or 3 persons' job. So it does take us a bit of time to return your call, but just keep calling and you will get a hold of someone. I do promise you that. So is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about stabilizing your bank.
Sure. All right. I think we are ready for questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's eroding our bank are the muskrats. Do you have a suggestion on how we fix that?
It's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Suggestion my husband has, but I don't want it to.
Yeah, I mean, you can terminate. I'm not, they're there. They have provided a purpose, and they do play a role in the ecosystem, right? I'm not sure. I know that there are some beaver relocation options, but muskrats are tough. Do you have any suggestions?
I haven't had to deal with it personally, but yeah, like relocating or maybe calling.
WDFW.
Yeah, maybe Fish and Wildlife,
Mm-hmm.
just to start, but I can definitely look into it a little bit more for you if
Yeah.
you'd like.
You mentioned the cottonwoods.
Uh-huh.
The bald eagles love to roost up those cottonwoods also.
Yes.
They're also good for road predators.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
So.
I see.
it's a win-win.
Yeah. There you go. So you're saying plant the cottonwoods to help deal with the muskrats?
Yeah, 'cause the eagles will get them.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's perfect. Yeah,
through the erosion bag.
right.
Deer.
Uh-huh.
Some trails and they do a lot of erosion. At least in
Mhm.
certain sections.
So they'll make they'll get $500 to plant cottonwoods
It's true.
and it'll get rid of the gophers and
Yeah,
very nice.
sure.
I am I'm trying to take those suckers, planting them down. Do I need a permit for that?
You might just want to contact, community development. You're fine. I didn't hear anything. You're what? I mean, your risk
Probably
is
call
really
Andy.
low. Yeah, you can call Andy or Vicky at
Yeah,
at
just at the
community
county.
development, but you're at a very low risk there. Just letting you know. If you are, say, installing a gabion on your own, I would highly advise against doing
Or
that.
putting rock down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the thing about the muskrats too, they are fur-bearing species in Washington State, so you can't just kill them. Like, you have to get a license to do it. If you're just killing them, it's good. Actually, get in trouble for it.
but I do like that, the cottonwood approach. I mean, even creating wildlife structures. So say having, you know, you could come into the office and we might be able to help find the best perch, say for other predators or osprey who might be able to help you deal with the issue. So if you are interested, reach out to us and we might be able to help look into that further. We just we've not had that question before, but I really do like that approach. So
Yeah.
you don't have to do the killing, and obviously you can't, we don't recommend that you do it on your own, but let a predator do it for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will use them. Any other questions?
I think John has one.
Hi, John.
If you've done 10 acres, how many acres are left to do?
A lot.
A lot of acres. Sure. So I mean, we haven't, say, Scott, do you know how much is?
How long is the river?
No. Our erosion hazard term maps, how many, we would have done acres anyways, just.
Linear feet.
Yeah,
Designation
linear maps, yeah.
As either of those, but there's, a lot of miles that are still
Mhm.
designated as moderate to high.
Yeah.
Um,
We got 9,500.
And,
Yeah.
the maps, just put out there while we're on it, are pretty high level. If you have a serious erosion problem, I think it's serious, and you're designated low or no erosion, you could have just been lumped into a larger area that's mostly low.
Mhm.
You can have, the conservation district come out and look, there can be an exception for what's on the map, so.
Great.
Yeah.
If
I
you
feel like
got
it's
erosion,
fine.
chances are we'll be able to help you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Any other question? I think I saw more
I
hands
saw
up.
a hand back there, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
The, large woody material.
Yes.
I've seen it, and it looks impressive, and I guess it's better than riprap, but my erosion is not that bad. Is there any way I can do it myself?
Install the large woody
Yeah.
material by yourself?
You have to go through a lot of permitting, which requires engineering plans usually.
That's my question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you're doing work below the ordinary high water mark, that's when you're gonna have to deal with the Army Corps, and some other fun people.
Yeah, right. But if you do go through the district and say, work with your neighbors or partners, that's what we're doing. So Kayla's
Yeah.
completed these like top of the line permits that really are comprehensive. There's another, with the Army Corps permit, there's a biological assessment that's required.
Mhm.
But fortunately, it's kind of a copy paste situation on the Pend Oreille River, if I can say that, just that we have similar species and it's a pretty, what's the term? It's a pretty similar system throughout the whole Box Canyon Dam Reservoir. So we can help with a lot of that. So please reach out to us after this presentation, after Scott's presentation, and we can come and do a site visit and maybe help
Yeah.
come up with some solutions. So, yeah, go ahead. Is this on?
To use rock to stabilize them.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Getting out permits to use rock stabilization.
We are not a permitting agency. So you would go to the county community development department to do that. We can help you write your permits, and the county actually offers that too. The county is really great to work with. I would say they're more on the side of the landowner than the regulator, which is really nice for most people to work with them. But we can certainly help you come up with a permit. And again, if you are at a moderate or high risk of erosion, there might be some funding available for you.
What triggers the requirement for, you said something about mean, and this is not like the ocean where you have a mean high tide.
Sure. Yeah, so
What is the mean?
There's a lot of different
Mhm.
triggers depending what you're doing.
Mhm.
It can be the type of technique you're doing. It could be if you're going to be affecting the water or the shoreline, if you're working in the ordinary high water mark or below it, if you're doing grading or adding fill, or doing any changes to the land surface. What else? I feel like there's so many things.
So suppose I had it on my bank.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
cut down a tree.
Yeah, that would potentially,
That'd be a removal.
I mean,
yeah, it would be.
Structure
So
removal.
You know, but at what, is there a particular level
Mm-hmm. So
that's measured?
it's called ordinary high water mark. So if you're working above ordinary high water mark, there might be some, so within a specific width from the, from the ordinary high water mark at the top of the bank back, that you might need to work with the Department of Natural Resources. So the issue is that the Pend Oreille River is considered a navigable water of the United States. So that's why the Army Corps of Engineers is triggered. And, we don't want to be held liable or make the landowner liable for any, any potential concerns. So we're just being upfront with you guys. There is a lot of regulation and in a lot of cases unnecessary regulation, especially if you're trying to improve your bank or provide salmonid habitat. That's why we have these fun, as Kayla mentioned, these loopholes. If you're like, cool, I'm actually just using bioengineered techniques and that's all that I'm doing, then you can kind of bypass some of the stickier permits. But yeah, it's a navigable water of the United States. So it does trigger,
I'm just trying to
determine where. So ordinary high water mark.
I think it was a few feet above the toe of the bank
Way
of
up
the
in
river,
there.
mostly.
Like last year, it came way up.
Mhm.
This year, not so much.
So ordinary high water is the highest point that the river reaches every 2 years, I think. Yeah. And
Yeah, it's usually so you have your bank and it's sloping, you have the toe right here. It's usually just a few feet above that,
Mhm.
at
And
least on average.
You're out on the river,
It does, yeah.
it varies.
you're down by Ione, it's 10 feet different than if you're.
Mhm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could have surveyors or even someone like me to go out and
Mhm.
determine where it is.
Mhm.
You could also just call the county and talk to them about your project and see if there's any permits they think. Because one of the projects we did was removing an old culvert that got left behind an old bridge replacement a long time ago. And it wasn't in the water, wasn't triggering anything. And he was like, just go ahead and remove it without doing any permits. So I think if you just call the county and explain your case, they can let you know.
Considering what I'm doing is not a project so much as yard maintenance.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I've got a bunch of wild stuff there. And I've got a lawn and a bunch of hawthorn and some trees and some old fence posts that fell down.
Mhm.
There's a bank eroded and the fence post went down.
Mhm.
These are not projects. Just trying to get to maintenance.
Way up, yeah.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I mean, if you want, again, the cool thing about being a conservation district, so these projects we're non-regulatory, which I'm grateful to be. And these could fall under the purview of what's called a farm plan. You can argue that it's a farm plan, and farm plan is proprietary information. So you can talk to us and we don't report you. So if you have some ideas that you want to run by us, you are free to do so. Just reach out, have us do a site visit, and we can maybe offer some guidance, what we would recommend, how to be above board and what you need to do to address your problem. So.
In long-term
Yeah,
improvement solutions to
the problem. Yeah, exactly. I think, sure.
Yeah, dealing with, the bidding process that I've got, what I think is above the county informed me that, no, I'm actually part of the river bank.
Mhm.
Just a couple of miles this side of the bridge. It triggered both those big permits.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, ours is, they had to fill it out.
I actually enjoy doing it, so I don't know why.
That's why it's your job. I know, I really like Excel spreadsheets, so,
So it's a nerd thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And like Scott said, like, where I was at, down
Yeah, the south end of the county, it's surprising how high ordinary high water actually is. So of that, every other year flood event, based on the last 50, 60 years of flood records, I went in there and got an average. It's about somewhere between 85,000 and 90,000 is the flow. And actually the county's aerial photography that they've done over the past couple of years, you can get on the county landowner webpage for, you can look up your plot and it's got a historical list of, you can scroll back in time, basically, look at those photos. You find your spot. A lot of times it will show you, and I wish I could remember which date, I think it was the 2011 photos, but it's one of the, they took it during the flood. And it just so happened that it was at right around 83,000. So you can look at that, you look at, say, where was the water? And when they took this, that's pretty close to high water. It's always higher than. That elevation, if you're down by, is actually lower than.
You look at River Mile.
You can have the gas now. Damn. Completely.
So I think they
The water.
Yeah,
from
they can.
Blue Slide River is lower.
Yeah.
From there up, it's higher. So, yeah.
So one thing too, sorry, before we get to you, just on the same, to determine ordinary high water, in addition to that, we do have the Pend Oreille County Shoreline Stabilization Guide. There's one that came out in 2016. It was just updated and should be published soon. And it does indicate your ordinary high water mark, or like your river mile, where you are on the river. Yeah, so that's cool. Did you have anything else to add, Corey? Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's in Newport, down by Newport, it's 15 feet of variation, and then up by Ione, it's like 4 feet. So it just,
It depends, yeah.
yeah.
And I was just told that the land act considered the river. People think it's on the high water marker.
Yeah. Well, and if you'd like us to come out and take a look, just, yeah, sure.
What's the name of that report?
The Pend Oreille County Shoreline Stabilization Guide. And it's available on our website. So we have, do you want to show them through our new tab? POCD.org. So you go to POCD.org. We're going to go through an exercise. And then programs. And then let's see, Shoreline Stabilization Program.
Oh,
Darn it.
well, that's nice.
Yeah, we'll go to
New share.
yeah. We got it.
Figure it out.
Nice. There you go. And share. Do, do, do.
Maybe.
It's on here. People online can see it.
Here,
You might
maybe
just have to
stop
pull
share.
the zoom over there to that screen.
Oh, right, we're in Zoom.
You can hit stop share and then just start over.
Yeah.
Do, 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 do. Please hold. We have time, you know.
Yeah, pull the, not maybe the zoom, but the other one is that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See, fix it. Internet Explorer over.
There we go.
Did it. This is hard to do. Okay. And then, yeah. Stop sharing. And then share. Here. Okay, so we're on the shoreline stabilization page, and you scroll down technical resources here, and you can go to POCD.org/shoreline POCD shoreline stabilization.
That's the guide right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the guide. This is what it looks like. It's the river. Yeah, so just go ahead and click on that. But yeah, this is an example. This is not an example of Kayla's site plan. Kayla's site plan is really beautiful. Like, it's stunning. It's really cool. You just got to work with us to see what it looks like.
Check us out in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly.
Says on DM.
Yeah, so you had a question,
Yeah.
right, sir?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, well, feel free to email or call us if you have any interest or questions following this.
Yeah. And, oh, Tom, we got a question?
From a geologic civil engineering aspect, all these steep slopes.
well above the natural depots. People need to understand that generally the 45 degrees from the mean high water back to the natural. And anything above steeper than that, you're fighting. And the steeper it is, the more you have to.
Yeah.
The more maintenance, the mortality.
Mhm.
So people need to understand it's about natural.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys.